Welcome to week 3 of Ecofeminism. My name is Rachel Hansen. I've been your instructor in this topic for the last 3 weeks, and I'm really excited to have you here with me. There we go. I just wanted to super make sure that my microphone was connected correctly because one time it wasn't, and I didn't have anybody here with me in the space. So I didn't realize until I was preparing all my video content to share elsewhere on the internet. So that was a little embarrassing. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping, as ever, to get us rolling here. Now, if you're joining because you feel extremely compelled to comment on what a woman on the internet looks like, this is not the place for you. I already know what I look like, and I don't want to hear what it is that you've got to say. So there's that. Now, for reasons that are unknown to everyone, including myself, I neglected to put the link to this course syllabus in this week's module, which I'm linking to in the chat. But if you're interested in seeing the syllabus, you can check out modules 1 or 2. It's linked there. I have, of course, learned from my mistakes, and I will link it again in week 4. But there is a syllabus for this class if you want to check it out. Now, one way that you could support this space financially, should you feel compelled to do so, is to purchase one of the books that is talked about in this module or in any of the modules in my Linktree shop. It's linked there again in the written module. There's no extra cost to you, but I do make a small commission, and so that's really helpful. And then a lot of asks here at the top, so I hope you'll forgive me, but my last ask is I really would like for this space to grow just a little bit more than it is presently, but I also know that it's a pretty niche space. So if this space online has been valuable to you in any way, it really would mean a lot to me if you shared the Substack, or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you shared a YouTube video with a friend or colleague. I would just really appreciate that quite a bit. All right, and now on to talk about something that is in fact a little bit more exciting, arguably a lot more exciting, and that is food. Now, really what we'll be talking about is food production, and how that really has the potential to either take us away from our natural environment, and the way that it is mostly produced, especially in the global north, really takes us away from our ability to live bioregionally, which we talked about last week, if you'll remember. And we're going to start with an essay, or I guess not really an essay. It's chapter 6 of The Sexual Politics of Meat, a Feminist Vegetarian Critical Theory by Carol J. Adams. Chapter 6 of this book is called Frankenstein's Vegetarian Monster. Now, embarrassingly, at least to me, I have not ever read Frankenstein before. I will be. My intent is to remedy that probably in the next year or so. I'll report back then. um, so it was really interesting to me to read this essay. I have read it a few times. Really talking about Frankenstein's monster, and very specifically that Frankenstein's monster styled themselves as a vegetarian. Um, and one might assume, not totally unfairly, that um, at the time it was kind of weird, right? um, really like have this as a topic and as a way to self-identify, to say for Frankenstein's monster to set themselves apart from the rest of humanity. Um, but if you really look at vegetarianism in the Romantic period, Mary Shelley's upbringing was very, perhaps not shockingly, given that she's the godmother of science fiction as we know it. um, her upbringing really kind of swirled around these social justice issues. And so moving away from a meat based diet is also, especially at the time, was a way to separate yourself from the brutality that is present in the culture of man. And I'll come back to that comment about at the time in a minute here. And we're really thinking about what was happening in the world at the time that this was written. Of course, slaughterhouses are newly industrialized in London, where she lived, but also elsewhere in the world. Really pretty brutal places. And they are, of course, still pretty brutal today. And so vegetarianism was really seen as a way to protest those brutal conditions, and really kind of build out that space to consider what a more gentle world could look like. Right? Not just, and I would posit, not just in the day to day, although, of course, yes, in the day to day, but also a little bit more broadly, right? Like, this is at a time when the British Empire is really expanding in a pretty terrible way, and notably into areas of the world where a plant-based diet was totally normal. And I'm, of course, referring to India. But even when if you go, yeah, whatever, Rachel, like that was well over 100 years ago. We don't really need to think about this anymore. I would argue that we do. Now, of course, most of us have not, with our own eyeballs, seen a slaughterhouse, or really have any kind of a meaningful connection to how our food is being prepared. The brutality is still present, right? And kind of off the top of my head, I live in an area of the Twin Cities where that is very agricultural in nature. In the city, right, I'll say next door, right, like in the neighboring city to my city, was founded as a meatpacking city, and still is. So I've never seen a slaughterhouse, but I tell you what, I sure have smelled one. And that alone is pretty offensive to the nostrils. um, that's right. So I have that in my own backyard. I would guess that a lot of us do. Um, Maybe a little bit more unique to me. But when my parents were very first married, uh, and I was on the way in the late 80s, um, it was a pretty tough economic time. The only job that my dad could find was at a turkey processing plant. And so I grew up with stories of my dad shoveling turkey meat. Um, and I would say to this day, right when I'm smelling my neighboring cities' meat packing facilities, or a freshly fertilized farm field, my immediate first thought is, smells like money. I think that maybe our money could smell a little bit better, um, and be a little bit better for the planet. So I would just invite you to kind of think about that as a way to, like, what does it look like to at least try and kind of take the brutality out of your food and live a little bit more bioregionally. Um, Now, moving on to our next essay, which is in fact a real essay. Uh, um, we're kind of continuing to talk about brutality in farming. Um, Now, this essay, From Golden Rice to Terminator Technology, Agricultural Biotechnology Will Not Feed the World or Save the Environment, by Martha L. Crouch. Um, we really get to kind of dive into the conversation of genetically modified seeds. And at the beginning of this essay, she describes a scene that might feel somewhat familiar to a lot of us. And I'm going to read that verbatim. And I quote, "Imagine the university forum on the problems of biotechnology in agriculture. After an hour of carefully constructed arguments against further modernization of agriculture via biotechnology and in favor of strengthening traditional ways of growing food, I wrap up my speech and wait for questions. A hand shoots up, and the inevitable response is hurled toward the podium. You have not mentioned the population explosion. It might be nice to go back to the good old days before fertilizers, pesticides, and high-yielding monocultures, but to do so would condemn millions of people to starvation. We have no choice but to force ahead with the most advanced technologies we can devise. How else are we going to feed the world?" End quote. Um, and if you, like me, grew up in the 90s, I'm going to assume, I wrote the Global North in the module, but maybe this is just a North America thing. I don't know. But hearing a lot about the starving children in Africa. That's problematic all on its own. But if you've grown up hearing this phrasing, you do assume, right, as you go through your day to day, that there is simply not enough food as it currently exists to feed every human being adequately on the planet. But that is in fact not the case. In fact, there's some pretty significant potential to scale back on biotechnology to farm a little bit more sustainably and still be able to feed everyone. Oh, excuse me. Now, one thing that I really do find myself harkening back to is actually just our conversation last week with Winona LaDuke, where we were talking then. I don't know if you remember about really slowing down and taking the time to understand our environment. But when it comes to implementing, right, like, what is the word? Biotechnology. That just flew clean out of my head. Uh, um, um, it really is critical to take the time to kind of slow down a little bit and understand what the impacts are. Um, because right now we're not in an environment that really is controllable. Um, right now, as I was reading this time, because of course I have read it previously, um, I found myself thinking about um, a relatively new film um, called The Wild Robot. When did that come out? Oh, yeah. I'm correct in saying it's relatively new. It came out in 2024. Now, the Wild Robot film is based on a book of the same name, um, which I have also read, and it's a kid's book, but it is excellent. Um, in the film and in the book, humans are living in societies um, post global climate catastrophe. Um, yeah, we don't get much of that story because we're following the animals and the wild robot. Um, but the humans are very specifically farming in like these really like massive like biodomes. Um, maybe in a setting like that, biotechnology could be helpful, but that's not where we are right now. Um, and if I'm being real honest, I hope that it's a place that we really don't ever get. And I think that we um, don't get there um, by slowing down now to really thoughtfully farm in ways that are more sustainable, both for the planet and for farmers, which is another thing really to think about in all of this. Um, and then this brings us back around. I apologize for going on a little tangent there. Uh, it really comes back around to my comment about the fact that there is, in fact, already enough food for everyone. Um, and the reason that hunger is a problem globally is really down to the policy choices of nations. Um, so when arable land is being used for monoculture farming, um, rather than polyculture farming, which is like basically just you're growing more than one thing in the field, we lose the ability to live bioregionally. And so there are policies, right, like local, state, federal, um, and international level that can really allow us to be a little bit more holistic and close to home when it comes to our food production. Now, our last article of the evening here is from a book that we've used before and will use again, Toxic Traits. Now, this essay is called Blue Collar Women and Toxic Waste Protests, the Process of Politicization, by Celine Krauss. Now, the very first time that I read this article, I was a relatively young undergraduate student. So I was expecting something kind of boring. This is definitely not very boring. I would find it to be really quite interesting. And the reason that I wanted to bring it into this space is because it's so close to the heart of what we've spent these last few weeks really talking about. And that is the way that women's private roles of caretaker can get transformed into political weapons. Now, Krauss spent many years interviewing women across racial and economic backgrounds who led grassroots fights against toxic dumps, landfills, and incinerators in their communities. Now, her central argument here is that these groups of women that she's interviewing didn't arrive at environmental activism through really anything theoretical. They arrived at their activism through motherhood, which, if you remember back to week 1 where we talked about, a little bit about kind of the idea that socially we view the planet as female. Our culture treats women pretty badly, so of course we would treat the earth badly. So it's really appropriate that something like motherhood would make you a little bit more acutely aware of the environment around you. And so it was all these little things that you notice as so I hope you'll forgive me. I'm hesitating here because I don't want to come across as though I think that it is only moms that notice things about their kids. But sometimes there are just like those little random things that kind of the primary parent is going to notice that maybe the person who is, going out and, working for money, etc., might not notice. And women most often are the primary parents. But I just want to make it very clear. I don't think that only women can be that primary point person for parents. But it was noticing all those weird little things that happen with your kids and happen with your friends. That really brought them into this activist realm. Now, one thing that I really appreciate about this essay, and I think is a testament to the skill that Krauss has as an interviewer, she doesn't flatten the story into a single narrative, right? When she's talking about white working class women, these were women who had a lot of trust in the system. That if you told the officials the right facts, then the government would fix the problem. And so their story is very much one of betrayal. And more specifically, like newfound betrayal, right? Whereas African American women, were already existing in a space, understandably, of very deep cynicism, um, and distrust of the state. Um, and so their struggle for, and fighting for, um, like a healthier community, really was an extension of a much older struggle. Um, and then Native American women, again, right, bringing up this frame of being from very land-based cultures, with their spiritual connection to Mother Earth. And so, right, to that demographic, the whole, public-private, environmental and politics split really didn't make a lot of sense in the first place. Now, of course, these interviews took place quite some time ago, and the activism persists because the environmental terror exists. And this is more of like a laugh to keep from crying style situation. But these really all are things for us to be thinking about. Right, what is happening in our communities? And right, it might be an incinerator, it might be a data center. What are the things that are happening in our communities that, where we really need to, again, just slow down, take our time, try to understand the ramifications of what we're proposing, before moving on. And then that's going to really enable us to live, again, bioregionally, to be a little bit more closer to our communities in a very physical sense. Now this went by really fast for me. We've been here for 31 minutes. I don't know if it went by fast for you. But as we close out here this evening, I do find myself a little bit curious if you think of the food that you consume as part of your natural environment. And if not, how do you think about your food? Now, I am very much looking forward to being in your inbox again on, let's see, what is the date on Sunday? Here we go. In your inboxes on August 2nd with our 4th module. And then I will see you back here again for a live chat about the module, which is Power, Science, and Globalization, at this time on August 5th. I hope that you have a great week, and I will talk to you again soon.